Good evening, everybody. Welcome to City Lit's virtual event celebrating the release of 4 new thrillers. Well, one has been delayed, but we'll celebrate anyway. Join me in welcoming Sharon Doering, author of She Lies Close, and she's in conversation tonight with Vanessa Lillie, Wendy Walker, and Jen Pashley. Sharon lives in the Chicago area with her husband, their 3 kids, and an unusually civilized dog. In her other life, she was a science professor, biotech stock analyst, and xenotransplantation researcher. She's a lover of coffee and absurdity and loves connecting with other book lovers on Instagram. She Lies Close is her debut thriller and will be out later this year. Vanessa is originally from Miami, Oklahoma, where she spent a lot of time investigating local ghost stories at the public library. After college, she worked in Washington, D.C., and then moved to Providence, Rhode Island, which she calls home with her husband and dinosaur-aficionado son. Her latest thriller, For the Best, was just released. Wendy Walker is the best-selling author of a number of thrillers and the new, just released, Don't Look at Me. She has sold rights to her books in 23 languages, as well as film and television options. She's currently finishing her 5th thriller and managing a busy household in Fairfield County, Connecticut, where she lives with her family. And Jennifer Pashley's stories have appeared in Mississippi Review, Hank, Smoke Along Quarterly, and others. She has been awarded the MR Prize for Fiction, the Red Hen Prize for Fiction, and the Carve Magazine Esoteric Award for LGBT Writing. She's the author of several novels, including the just released The Watcher. So we're very excited to have all of you here. Everyone, please join me in welcoming them virtually to City Lit Books.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Teresa, and thank you, Jordan, for helping out, and thanks to City Lit Books. We really appreciate you guys hosting us. I'm Sharon Doering, and I'm going to go through and ask a bunch of questions, and then we'll do a fun lightning round of questions. And then if anyone has any questions, we'll save those for like the last 15 to 20 minutes. So just type away in the chat and I'll scroll through them. So authors, can you guys start off with like a quick elevator pitch of your book? Wendy, do you want to go first?
Sure. So this is Don't Look for Me. It is about a wife and mother who goes missing in a small town far from home. Everyone assumes she's walked away from her life. She's had a traumatic family tragedy and lots of things that have gone on that day. And they find a note that says, "You'll be better off without me. Don't look for me." 2 weeks later, her daughter gets a new lead, returns to this eerie, desolate town, determined to search for her at all costs. And the best compliment I have had for this book so far is that for 339 pages, you will forget everything that's happened in 2020. So I think that's actually the best elevator pitch I can give.
That is a good pitch. Vanessa, can you go next for us?
Sure. For the Best, sort of behind me, is my 2nd thriller, just out on Tuesday. And it's the story of a woman who sort of has it all. She's got a high-profile CEO job, husband, kid, nice house, but she has a pretty serious drinking problem. And so one night she goes out, gets blackout drunk. She wakes up the next morning, which is when the story opens, hungover, trying to remember if she said anything stupid. And then there's a knock at the door. There's a policeman there holding her wallet in an evidence bag, which was found next to a murdered man. So suddenly she goes from high-profile CEO, has it all, to losing almost everything and being the only suspect in this murder. So she starts a sort of like a true crime vlog, just like a video blog, to investigate what happened, to look for clues and try to find the real killer. So her journey is a bumpy one. It's all in Providence where I live. And one of my favorite things about it are the video vlog chapters. And what's kind of cool about how it ended up is they're actually formatted kind of like a script, which I think is really fun. So it was for a second book, it was really a great experience.
Thank you. That's great. And cheers to that drinking.
I know. I feel I'm like, well.
Jen, could you tell us about your book?
Yeah. This is my book. I had to go get it. This is my book, The Watcher. It just came out on Tuesday with Vanessa's. They're little book siblings. It's really, I did not prepare this question. And I'm terrible at this, like, because everybody's terrible at this, honestly. But it's a book about secrets, about like family secrets, and like trying to figure out who's telling the truth. It's a rural noir. So, unlike a lot of stories that are set like, in the city, or like these sort of like lush suburban suspense novels, this one is very like North Country, upstate New York, lots of poverty, lots of drugs, lots of deception, and this sort of friction between, the haves and the have-nots is sort of what's driving the conflict behind it. So.
That was a good pitch.
Thanks.
I read all your books in the past week and a half, and they're just amazing. I devoured all of your books, so I'm so excited for, readers to buy them, and they're amazing books. I would like to ask, I know some of you have like inspiration stories or like an origin story for your book. So can you guys go through that? Jen, do you want to go first?
Sure. There's probably 3 different things that were origin stories for this book. One of them was finding the car, which if you've already read the book, there's like an abandoned, very old car in the woods that one of the main characters finds. That car exists. It's in the woods behind Hamilton College. And I was hiking and I found it, and I sort of, my head started spinning with ideas. A lot of the ideas come from hiking, but then I also sort of like on a personal level, I guess, had these sort of issues with family property that needed to be sorted out. So I was kind of interested in the sort of legal tension behind that too, like how things get resolved, how things go, how do things get so abandoned sometimes, like who's the person who stopped paying the taxes for 20 years or whatever, they sort of like things that should be a family heirloom that end up becoming the problem that everybody fights about. So it's sort of a combination of those 2 things together set that story into motion.
That is really fascinating because everybody, can or will at some point in their life relate to that whole property sorting things out,
Yeah.
And that's pretty tense. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a great inspiration origin story. Wendy, do you want to go next?
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, but you're muted.
Now, okay, sorry. Yeah, my dog is my dog is wandering around, and he's like doing his like nightly roll where his collar tag shakes. So I was sparing everyone that. Yes. So this is actually the only book I've written that came from like an actual specific moment that happened to me. I've had inspiration from things in my life before, issues or people I've met or things I've read about, but this was a specific moment where I was actually on the same road that Molly Clark finds herself on. I was also driving home from watching my child at a sports game. I had a great deal going on in my life, and just spinning thoughts. I know a lot of us can relate to this now when you have already a high level of anxiety and then you have a day that like pushes you over the edge. Like these days I can drop a dish towel and get pushed over the edge because, my cup of anxiety is so full. But at this time, this was a couple years ago, and I stopped at this gas station. I was just reeling with emotion, and I was pumping gas, and I was in this very small, desolate, economically depressed town. And I saw this road that just went on forever and into the distance. And I had this flash thought that just came into my mind to walk down that road. And it was terrifying. Like, whoa, where did that come from? And it quickly passed, and I got back in my car. But the whole way home, I started thinking, as a writer, you grab hold of these little moments. And I thought, I wonder if other people have these thoughts and where they come from. And I started doing research, and that's where the walk away theme came about, because it is an actual psychological phenomenon called emotional hijacking. It's when the emotional part of your brain hijacks the rational thinking part of your brain and causes you to take action that has not been properly thought through. It's triggered by fight or flight instincts, and there's no stopping it. But emotions have to be pretty high to trigger that. And in fact, I then learned that most missing person cases are the result of a walk away situation. So that was the seed of the book, was this one moment that happened to me, and then finding out that it was an actual phenomenon that many people experienced, and that resulted in people disappearing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's so relatable. I emailed you this, that just 2 weeks ago, I had one of my teenagers yelling at me, and then my 8-year-old was yelling at me, and my husband said to them, stop yelling at mom or she's going to leave and not come back. And then he was joking, and he's like, you ever think about that? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, really?
Yeah, it's like a little secret that nobody ever wants to admit, but it's a normal reaction to an extreme amount of stress or a high level of underlying stress that's topped off. It's like that extra shot of tequila that you didn't need. It just pushes you over the edge. And I loved that expression of the emotional hijacking of your thoughts. And it's a really powerful thing. And actually, there are a lot of reports right now of people doing this virtually. So we're doing everything virtually. People are walking away virtually. They're shutting down all of their stuff, and we can't physically drive, and knock on someone's door anymore, or fly out and, see what someone's up to. So they are able to walk away in their own homes. And it's actually something I've been reading about lately.
It's probably a positive thing to walk away for a little bit,
Yeah.
Thank you. Vanessa, could you share your origin story?
Absolutely. So my debut Little Voices was a place where I put all of my new motherhood anxieties, my very big feelings about suddenly having my life subsumed by this awesome little creature. But there's a lot to unpack in that relationship and just my feelings about it. And for the best, what started the whole story really was during the Women's March in Washington, just seeing photos of it. And there's this one kind of pretty iconic photo of Angela Peeples, who is a Black prominent activist. She's in the middle of the march, and there are 3 white women kind of behind her, taking selfies in their pink cats, which, I mean, I've taken a selfie in front of the Capitol too. I'm not, but the point is Angela Peeples was sitting there, and she was holding a sign that said, "Don't forget, white women voted for Trump." And even though that walk was kind of a moment of celebration, I did sort of have this, almost like a seatbelt jerking you back of, yeah, but so many women voted for someone who, is a misogynist and kind of against our interests. And this was before we knew many of the things we know now. It was more just kind of on that level of the things he'd said and done and been accused of. So, and the point was that, I knew that I needed to reconcile in some way why white women were doing that. And as a white woman, and I basically just started searching for reasons. And the one that kept coming back to me was a sense of privilege. And this idea that, our world, our systems, our laws in this country were built by a white power structure. And white women benefit from that every single day in our lives. And that that's cute, buddy. My son is apparently going to interrupt every Zoom thing I have today. So just 2 for 2. And so I, wanted to push myself. And the great thing is that we've been having real conversations in this country, particularly in all the murder of these Black men and women, particularly in our cities, about privilege and white privilege. And it's a conversation that was obviously long in coming. And it's a conversation I needed to have with myself. Like the exploration of my main character, Jules, is not about me pointing my finger at other people or pointing my finger at other white women. It's really about me thinking about my own privilege, my own times in the past where I made mistakes, where I've done the wrong thing, said the wrong thing. And it's, daily work. And, being a white woman in this country, I have to be very mindful of that. And for me, writing about it and exploring, like, to me, the ultimate white privileged female situation was like being accused of murder. And like, what would you expect the police to do? And what would you expect your friends to do and your work to do? And like, what allotments should you be given, and second chances and third chances? And so it was just me pushing a lot of kind of personal buttons to explore this character in the story.
That's really powerful. And it's so amazing how, articulate and how much intent you have with the book. I read the book, it was amazing. And that intent, and hearing you talk about the origin and then reading the book is pretty amazing too. Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to ask a question about writing first drafts. So when you guys are writing your first draft, what percentage of the time do you think you're in like a state of flow versus the percent of time you're like pushing it up the hill and working on it? It's work for a first draft. What do you think? Wendy, can you go ahead and start with that one?
Wow. It's varied from book to book. I am a plotter, so I like to have an outline. I like to have the plot mapped out, at least the clues, the facts, the red herrings. If I have multiple characters, then I like to also have laid out the disclosures of their backstory, their maybe things in their relationships that are going to cause the reader to, draw assumptions. Maybe they're correct, maybe they're not. I feel like that's a puzzle that has to be put together in order to pull off the twists and the turns and the surprises that I want to give the reader. So I usually map those out. And if I have that mapped out, I can really like write a draft in, depending on how much time I have with kids and all of that. But if my kids are in school full time, then I can write a draft in 4 to 6 weeks. Now from there, it could be, months of revision, but I have to immerse. I have to sit down every morning and I have to write 1 or 2 chapters. And if I don't do that, if I don't stay immersed in the story, then I don't get those little moments of inspiration that come in the middle of the night or when I'm running or when I'm in the shower. Like when your brain sort of is not focused on it, but you've been focused on it for most of the day, it's like these thoughts will bubble up and they have more space to breathe and more, just more freedom, but they're still coming back to the focus of the book. And if I don't write quickly, if I don't stay at it for that many hours a day, I don't get that creative bump of middle of the night wakings where I, dictate into my phone. Half the time crazy stuff like, I'll wake up like she's really an elephant who's been living a different, I'm like, what? Wait, what? Like, sometimes like crazy thoughts, but sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they solve the whole problem of the book. Sometimes it's a twist that I never would have thought of had I just sat and concentrated for hours, but I have to be fully immersed. So that's usually the first draft for me. I say I will have like a 4 to 6 week period.
That is amazing. That's so fast. What about you, Jen?
They're very different. So the Watcher, I want to say I had an extraordinary opportunity, and I had an artist residency at Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's a small town. There's a little college, and they, if you haven't done one of these, it's like they give you 3 meals a day, and you have your own room, and somebody changes your sheets every Monday. And I wrote a first draft of The Watcher there in 6 weeks. In 2016, I was there on election day. It was horrific. People were crying. And that's the fastest I've ever done that. I'm not a plotter. I sort of had like a plan that wasn't like plot points. I had like a path that I was following. And my key most of the time, and this is still true, is to stop when I know what the next thing is, so that I'm not just totally reinventing the wheel the next morning when I sit down. Like if I know, okay, if this is done and I know this is the next thing that's going to happen, I'll leave myself a note next, and then I can go on. But most of the time I don't have the whole thing plotted out. I don't know what the ending's going to be. I do also have that same sort of, in and out of the state of writing, so that like there's the active time when you're actually doing it, and then a lot of stuff gets worked out, like hiking or driving, or and that's when you end up getting these weird ideas. And sometimes I text them to a friend, because then if I just put them in notes in my phone, but if I text them to somebody, she'll be like, what the hell is this? And then I have to go back to it. So, but yeah, that's definitely the fastest I've ever done that. We kept almost none of that first draft, but I did get it done in 6 weeks.
Wow. So you kept almost none of it. I mean, the story though, right? The story was very similar, but the like writing and the scenes and all that changed. It was still the story?
There was a lot of stuff that came and went, or became something slightly different. I mean, the seed of the story was still there, and the characters were still there. And the sort of the trajectories and their wants and their transformations were the same, but the getting there went through a lot of different. I also tend to be a skeletal writer, so I leave space for myself to add things, instead of overwriting and then going back and taking things out. So I had to kind of work to get up to where I needed to be after that. But I felt like I had a beginning and an end when I left there, which was good.
Yeah. So that's amazing. You're a fast one too. What about you, Vanessa?
So writing the story, the character's voice of Jules was so strong in my head that I sort of just chased that, because that isn't really always the case in the past, but it just, I don't know if it was me just like processing the themes or thinking about myself, like a very extreme, terrible version of myself. I don't know, something, but she was just there. So I wrote a fairly quick, fast draft. I did outline, because by the time my debut Little Voices was published, I've been trying to be published for almost 13 years. And the previous books that didn't work, I'd kind of written by the seat of my pants, which means you just sort of write and see what happens and figure it out later. So I do focus on structure. But with this one, Jules sort of drove the crazy train. And then when I was at the end of it, it was 120,000 words, which is like 40,000 words longer than it should be. And there was some plot, but I sent it to my saint of an editor, and she read it and actually really liked the premise and the voice. And, she's like, you just need to completely rewrite it and it'll be fine. And I was like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. So in this case, I did a lot of structure, and it was like a to the studs renovation. But there's also something liberating about just being like, oh, okay, let's just do this again. I'm not trying to save it. It is what it is. So I just kind of started from the beginning and took what was good, and I took about mostly what was bad. And then, by the end, I just plodded along, and the book was complete in only like 80,000 words, which is about where it should have been.
Yeah. And then when you were writing so before you even gave it to your editor, when you were writing your first draft, how long did that take you?
think maybe 5-6 months.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I only would write maybe 3 days a week because my son's in school, only then. So, and like after he's home, it's just like chaos. So it was for 3 days a week, about 6 months. I do think he's in school now 5 days a week, kindergarten. So I'm hoping, you know, I did write a novel during quarantine, but I'm hoping now when I kind of pick up a new book or whatever I do next, I can write it even faster, but we'll see. But, you know, 6 months, which is totally fine. I mean, that's no
That's
complaint.
pretty good. Yeah, the 4 to 6 weeks sounds crazy to me. 6 months even sounds kind of fast to me. Okay, so I got my editorial notes back from my editor a week ago for my second book. And reading through them, there were some really funny comments in there. Like I remember one of them was, you know, this character is a bit of a wet blanket, and can we take the moron stuff out of this one character, because I made one character kind of oblivious. So I'm just wondering if there's something that stands out. So it's just really funny. I was laughing really hard while I was reading through these editorial notes. So I was just wondering if anything stands out in your memory, something that your editor wrote in your notes that was either like powerful or really hit home, or something kind of goofy or funny. If there's anything that kind of comes to mind. Jen, can you go first? Or if you can, or whoever wants to go first, if something's coming to their mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the things that made me laugh from the editor tended to be things like, I like to lace in real trashy things like teenagers getting drunk on Four Locos. And I would have an editor who would be like, what's a Four Loco? And I was like, oh, honey, you know, like these like sort of things that I think, you know, better people don't know. But I know. So those were always funny to have those questions come up that are like, we don't know what this is. Is this a real thing? How do you know this is always a good one. But I think the best thing that happened to me this time around was when I finally got all my collected notes from my editor this time. She kind of laced in these little, like, they felt like love notes where like there would be parts where she was like, here's, you know, extra questions that need to be answered about this scene, or can we have this happen at the end of this? And then she would also leave a note that was like, here's what I love about this. And it was such a nice balance to get not just a to-do list of things that needed to change, but, you know, that kind of affirmation that like, this is working, you know, like somebody's feeling something about it, or that it's, you know, that it's successful in that way. So that was by far like the best editorial experience as far as this book was concerned.
Yeah, the love notes are nice.
Yeah.
Wendy, what about you? Is there anything that stands out, like either just powerful or you know, serious or funny?
So I'm a lot like Jen in that I like to be handled like a toddler when it comes to criticism. Like, oh my gosh, I just love the sound of your voice when you're screaming. Maybe you couldn't scream quite so much throughout the day, or, you know, like the positive first, and then the correction of behavior, in this case of writing. But my editor doesn't really do that. She's pretty straightforward, and it's fine. I've gotten, you know, I have friends I go to then sort of, you know, cry a little and get over it. But the way the overall, I would say the way that I see all of my books is like a Jenga tower. And in my mind, all of the pieces have to stay, because otherwise it's going to fall apart. And so when an editor or anyone comes in and says, we're going to take out this piece and this piece and this piece and this piece, and it's not so much that I am personally attached to each piece, but in my mind, this is the only way the tower stays up. And so I'm kind of like, don't you see what's going to happen? The tower will fall. It's going to fall. And I then have to take a step back and figure out if the tower's really going to fall without these pieces, or if other pieces could go in their place, and rethink it. Because for me, every book is so carefully constructed that pulling those pieces apart is really hard. And the funniest thing that happened was in Emma in the Night, there's a forensic psychologist, and I wanted her to have a lot of like backstory, and I wanted her to be sort of edgy. And so she had like this guy that she was seeing, but she had relationship issues. So she always walked out and left him in the middle of the night because she had insomnia, and he would always wake up alone. And it was just, you know, sprinkled throughout the book. It wasn't necessary, but I felt like it gave her some personality and some things that readers could attach to. Like, okay, she has a boyfriend. Like she's not just this cardboard, you know, psychologist. But, you know, it was extraneous to the plot. It wasn't necessary. So it all got cut out. And I remember having the conversation, like, can she at least have the boyfriend? No. Can she at least like go on dates? No. And then I was like, can she keep the dog? Yes, but you don't need to have a name for him. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even get to give the dog a name. It was really, you know, and in the end, it was probably good for the story, because readers of suspense will cling to any character that you give them. They will hold in their memory as somebody who might be important. So, you know, if she had a boyfriend, they might be thinking he was somehow involved or whatever. So it was, you know, I'm sure it was a good comment, but I remember like asking about the dog. Can she keep her dog? You know,
You're still a little bitter about it.
yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But the funny thing is, when they were working on the pilot for the television show, and you know, these things are always in different stages of development, but one of the conversations with the writer was, you know, I think I'm going to give her a boyfriend and like a love interest. I'm like, I know, right? But of course you can do that if you have, you know, 8 seasons of a television series. You can't necessarily do it in a book. So, but it was funny.
That is funny. What about you, Vanessa?
One of my favorite notes, you know, besides please completely rewrite this, was so when I said, you know, Jules was like really in my head and her voice was strong, and you know, in that draft it was way too strong, and my editor, you know, said, I like where she goes and I like what happens, but you need to make sure, even with a character that has a lot going on and has some like darker sides to them, that the reader immediately likes them and wants to follow along. And she used the example from Gone Girl, which is, you know, you like Amy at the beginning a lot, and then you follow her along, and then by the twist in the middle, you're still in for the ride all the way. I mean, my Jules is not an Amy, but I love that idea that, you know, to just always be mindful of the reader and their experience, and to not torture them unnecessarily. You know, if you make your character kind of hard to follow because she's just completely off the rails at the very beginning, you know, that's tough to keep at an 11 all the way through. So I love that advice, and it really kind of helped me dial her back and also like get into more of her character versus maybe caricature, which was a little bit of where she was, I think, in the early drafts.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's do, since I think we're almost at 40 minutes, let's do a quick lightning round of questions, and then we'll get to some of the attendees' questions. Okay, so let's see, Vanessa, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, how good are you at keeping a secret?
Oh, 10. Wait,
you're a 10, Vanessa?
Right?
You're good. You're a 10. You're really good at keeping a secret.
Yeah. For sure.
What about you, Wendy?
I'm like an 8 if it's family. If it's family, because you know, it's family. Friends, I'm a 10. Okay.
What about you, Jen?
I'm probably a solid 8 all around. I would guess. It depends on what it is, and it depends on. Like, I think the family thing is complicated, right? Like it depends on when there's like danger involved or something. Like then there's different levels. But for the most part, I would say I'm most mostly 10. And then there are occasions where I'm just a 5, where I'm just like, nope, nobody else needs to know this.
Yeah, I would say I'm a 0 unless you tell me I need to be a 10, because I will talk about anything. I mean, me, anyone, like, I think that's great. I'm a very open person. So some people could have the perception that I'm a 0 because maybe I shouldn't have said that. But if you know, if you don't say, how do you know, right?
Yeah,
I don't understand discretion. I don't have that gene.
Okay. What about first jobs? Vanessa, what was your first job?
Oh, my
Ever.
first job?
Yeah, your first job ever.
Osborne Drugs. It's a little pharmacy. I mean, babysitting, but my first kind of real with the paycheck job was, I sold a lot of Beanie Babies, actually. It was during the Beanie Baby craze.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to talk about Beanie Babies, I know an extraordinary amount about the, you know, like 2000s era, that golden age of Beanie Babies that we all remember fondly.
Okay, what about you, Jen? What was your first job?
Oh, my dogs are gonna bark. I had a job at my high school in the biology department, where I took care of the animals that we had. So I like fed snakes, and there were like turtles and hamsters and stuff. But mostly there was a lot of like having to put on like really heavy leather glove and like take dead rats and dance them around in the snake cage to get the snake excited about the rat because it was dead. There's like no chase if it's dead, but I would have to like reanimate it and like, you know.
But you totally volunteered for that, right?
I asked for that job. My friend, I mean, one of my friends had the job, and she was like, "We need somebody else." So I was like, "I'm there. I'm your weirdo."
What about you, Wendy? What was your first job?
I worked in a sandwich shop, and that was in high school. My first real job was in investment banking, but I worked in the sandwich shop, and I became, you know, being the mini perfectionist I was, I became the best sandwich maker ever. I, to this day, can remember what you could have in your sandwich: lettuce, tomatoes, onions, pickles, hot peppers. And I could take like 10 sandwich orders at a time and lay them all out. And I'd have like the spatula with the steak cheese and slapping on the tuna salad. I mean, I was like obsessed with being the best sandwich maker at this like fast. It was a like, they don't have them around here. They're called D'Angelo's, but they're fast, sort of fast food sandwich shops like Subway. And it's a chain. And yeah, and my sister still teases me because she worked there too. And you know, she's like, you were like totally out of control.
Okay, how many hours of sleep do you need, Wendy? I know you're not sleeping much lately, but how many hours of sleep do you need?
Oh my gosh, want, I don't even know anymore. 6 hours will get me through the day. 7 hours is kind of my sweet spot, but it's always broken up. I always wake up in the middle of the night at some point, and sometimes I can go right back to sleep. But if I get less than 6, there's a nap happening at some point. I'm a big napper. It's like, it's a great brain reset, even if it's 20 minutes, just to completely wash away everything that I've been doing and just like hit like restarting your computer.
What about you, Vanessa?
Sorry, I was talking about mac and cheese. The question was,
well, how many hours of sleep do you need?
Oh, well, obviously a lot more than I'm getting. I mean, 8 would be great. August, who I'm staring at on my phone, wakes me up a lot lately for cuddles. So I'm up 2-3 times a night as well. But you know, we'll get through it.
Yeah, a lot of interruptions. Yeah. What about you, Jen?
10.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding. I'm a vampire. Like, I need to. I mean, I also don't go to sleep early. Like, if I needed that much sleep, I should be going to bed at like 9:30, but I go to bed at like 1. So that's my secret. Now you guys can tell everybody.
Okay, I'm gonna do a last, last lightning round, maybe. Yeah, last one. Okay, invisibility, super strength, or flying? What do you think, Wendy?
Ooh, invisibility.
Invisibility.
Oh, yeah, bring it on.
What about you, Vanessa?
Well, this is a weird one because I'm gonna probably embarrass my parents because they have such a weird daughter. But I have memories, and I know they're not real, but I do, like little kid memories of levitating. And so I guess I would do the power of flying because I've always, like on some deep subconscious level, thought, did I levitate when I was a child? And I have a family friend who also has the same memories because we've talked about it.
Oh.
That
Very
weird.
interesting.
However weird you thought I was, now I'm that much weirder.
That's what the next book is going to be about. There's going to be levitation in it.
It is set in Oklahoma, where I'm from, so never say never.
What about you, Jen?
I think flying, hands down.
Flying. Okay.
I would love it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to some of these questions. So let's see. There's a question about what is your writing process? And let's see, Catherine asked, what is your writing process? What was the first idea that started you writing these books? So let's see, the first idea that started you writing these books, I think we answered that with the origin. If we didn't answer that, then Catherine, you can say it again. But do you want to talk, Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about your writing process?
Yeah, I am a mess. Surprise.
Jen, you have to interject that we're on a group text where we share all of our daily writing trials and tribulations. So that's
true. I mean, there's a couple of people missing, but these are the people who know what my daily struggle is like. So I have tried a couple different things, but right now I'm trying to move sort of no more than a chapter at a time, or like a couple of chapters at a time, like sort of like a movement at a time, I guess, not quite a full act. And I work a lot in pencil, and I like to work in a sketchbook. And I'm a list and a map maker. So, it's kind of sketched out before I actually sit down and write words. But a lot of it I do without even paper. Like a lot of it I do just like walking or something, or driving. That's where all this sort of rumination happens, or texting my friends, like worry emojis.
What about you, Vanessa? Do you want to add anything to the writing process? And actually, I'll ask too, along with writing process, are there any quirks you have that you have to do before you write, or while you write? I guess I would add that.
I just write as best I can when I can. The kind of weird or quirky thing that I do is I am changing often how I'm writing. So sometimes I'll be in a Word document, or I'll switch to Scrivener, which is kind of like screenplay, almost formatting. I've got a cork board on my wall that I'll take index cards and write scenes, and or I'll go to an Excel document and write out the scenes and word counts to just see how things are balancing out. And that's usually a response, I think, to something instinctively not working in the draft. I'll just need to pivot a little bit. So it's pretty random and sometimes feels a little silly. I'll go to Kinko's and print out the whole thing, staple all the chapters, lay it out, write note. I mean, it's just whatever it takes to kind of get to that next thing.
Okay. What about you, Wendy?
I just sit down with my laptop usually in Word, and I have to have coffee, and I'll keep reheating it. Because I won't drink, I'll drink half a cup of coffee because I'll get busy, and then I'll have to go reheat the coffee. But there has to be hot coffee. It's like a little security blanket, and my outline. So if I have those two things, I'm good to go, and I can go for, if I don't have anything else going on during the day, I can sometimes go for 6 to 8 hours with maybe one little break. But coffee for me, it's like the little stimulation for, for its time to settle in and work. It's really ugly if there's no coffee. And I have gone to, I don't like Keurig, my kids do. I have to have a French press. I will open 4 Keurigs and pour them in my French press if I've run out of coffee. So yeah.
That's funny. Okay, I just want to mention in the chat that Lane said her book is out October 13th, and it's called They Never Learn.
And we need to hear about your book.
Oh, yeah, and actually that's another question. It says, Sharon, can you give an elevator pitch for your book?
Yeah.
Okay, so my book is about Grace Wright. She's a recently divorced woman who moves her kids into this house. She's looking for a fresh start. She's hoping to reset her crippling insomnia. And she finds out that she's moved in right next door to the only suspect in the kidnapping of this little girl, this 6-year-old girl, Ava Boone. And so as the story goes, Grace becomes obsessed with her neighbor, and she becomes obsessed with the family of the missing little girl, and then a body turns up. So it's actually, it's less of a crime novel and more of a psychological thriller that's kind of like an exploration of a dark mind. That's it. It's coming out it's out in the UK. It'll be out in the US November 10th. It kept getting pushed back. My publisher is in the UK, so they were having some problems with getting it shipped over here because of coronavirus. Let's see. And yeah, Wendy's is going to be out on the 15th, next Tuesday. There was a question that's from Catherine that said, what research did you do for your book? So did anyone do any research for their book?
Well, I already talked a little bit about the research that I did for, walking away and all of that. But I also had to do research on some very strange things, which we all do, I think. How much antifreeze would it take to kill someone, or how many apple seeds would you need, and do they actually cause enough damage to incapacitate someone, and what's the process, and there's some crazy things you end up researching when you're writing these books.
Oh yeah.
Do you have anything, Jen, that you want to mention, something weird you researched?
Yeah, I mean, for The Watcher, I think I did some crime scene research. I mean, I watch a lot of Forensic Files, but there are certain things, and it's also it's a detective book, but it's not it's not like a super crime. It's not a procedural, so there's certain things that I feel like I have a little bit more poetic license on, as long as I get the feel of it. But certain things like where does blood spatter go? Sometimes if you get it wrong, somebody's going to point it out to you. So some of that I had to what happens when you drag a body this way, which my Google history is damning. I'm sure everybody's is, but it's
yeah.
Don't look.
What about you, Vanessa?
Something I really enjoyed researching was restorative justice, and turn that down, and the principles around how that's used in rehabilitating criminals, or even how it's used to make amends with families that are victims or had family members who were killed. And there's a big movement around restorative justice, and has been for a long time. And so I really, there was a lot I just didn't know about it. And what's great about research, I think, is that you uncover parts of your plot that you didn't even know you had before. And so as you dig deeper into something, it just points you in a direction that I think makes it richer and much more interesting, and just a little bit of a deeper level than maybe you had before. So for me, restorative justice and just learning about that was such a pleasure, and helped me kind of put words into feelings that I was having about wanting to talk about what the relationship is of justice with both the person who committed a crime as well as the victims and their families.
Yeah, that is fascinating. That when you're researching something, like I'm kind of the crazy stuff, but when you're researching something that's actually valuable to your growth as a person, that's pretty amazing. I see, I missed a question from Stephanie. What attracted you to writing in the thriller genre? Do you want to go ahead, Vanessa?
Yes. So since I was like my earliest favorite books, like in middle school, were Christopher Pike, and those like really dark mysteries. I've always sort of liked a darker story, even Grimm's fairy tales and things like that. But I didn't write until I was in my 20s again. And I think what drew me to thrillers is it's what I read, which you would think you would know that when you start writing, but you don't always know that. And sometimes you start out writing something and then you realize it's not that good because you don't read enough of it. So I knew I needed to write thrillers because that's what I read. And then also, just for me, a thriller is probably the most intense moment or few days or weeks or whatever in this person's life. And, I think in other genres, like maybe a romantic comedy, it's the most romantic moment or the most, I don't know, if it's maybe a literary fiction, then it's, an awakening or something. But for crime fiction, it's really the most terrifying and intense moment of their life. And sometimes it can be something that's been building for their whole life. So it's just an opportunity, which is what I like about it, to really just go all out. And, it's where everything that's going to happen happens to this person. And so I really like exploring that moment and just pushing characters as far as I possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great answer. Wendy, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just love it. I don't know. I was encouraged to switch genres from women's fiction to writing psychological thrillers. And when I sat down to write All Is Not Forgotten, it was a very, very dark story. And the character is very complicated and dark. Sorry, that's my child. Hello. Who's not 5. He just needs a drink. No, and it was like coming home. I think I've always been drawn to the darker sides of people and the edginess in people and trauma and how it manifests and just the complexities of people, not the surface, but the deeper levels. And psychological thrillers really enable you to explore that. And they also tap into my more technical side, which comes from legal writing and brief writing, and which is where I was trained as a writer, of telling a story and putting the pieces together in a very methodical way. And so I think that's why I plot so much. But that analytical part of my brain is also really satisfied by this type of storytelling, because it does require, for my stories at least, a high degree of like precision in terms of the plotting. So I get both of that, and I love it. We'll never go back.
That's a great answer. That's a great, because I also see a question from Stephanie that says, what other genres would you like to write in? And I think I know the answer. Nothing, right? I mean, nothing, right? Everybody? Jen, you could go next and tell us if there's a genre you would want to write in, and then you could also answer the other question about what attracted you to thriller writing.
Okay. I could, if I was going to switch from here, I might go horror.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
But even that, like, I don't feel like I'm a deep genre writer. Like, I came into this as a literary writer, writing short stories or whatever. And the thing is that what always sort of makes the story for me is the psychological suspense. So it's all kind of suspense to me. I still don't really feel comfortable saying I'm a thriller writer, because I feel like it's not that thrilling, you know what I mean? Like it's
by my book, it's not that thrilling.
right. It's creepy, and it's a slower pace, and it's something you have to figure out. But so I feel like those are all like the keystones of suspense, you know?
Yeah.
Especially when it's sort of dark, psychological, like why would a person do this, or what drives somebody? But I think the sort of construct of the genre condenses it, like, and that's what, that's sort of what Vanessa was saying about, like, this is the scariest thing that has happened, or the most traumatic thing, that sort of like you cap the ends of it off on this, the high points of a problem. But the pleasure in that, I think, is the sort of like the tendrils of figuring all that out, the like, what you don't, the sort of base of the iceberg, But yeah, if I was going to switch, I'm definitely not going romance. But I might try horror sometime. That sounds fun.
Okay. What about you, Vanessa?
I the only reason I wouldn't try something is only because I feel like I haven't read enough of it. I think it would be really cool to try anything. I mean, I would write a romance. I think it'd be awesome. I've read lots of them. I actually remember Romance Writers of America way back in the day. I would love to try YA. That's a voice thing. If my voice fit, I think that would be so cool. And there's just, YA is a really exciting place to be. I think what they're doing in YA, we do like 5-10 years later. Like, I think it's a cool place to be. Fantasy would be cool. I would be open to anything. I was raised on fairy tales, so, sky's the limit.
Yeah, you're right about that. The YA books I read, I'm just blown away. It's like every sentence has so much power, and yeah, I'm blown away by YA. So that is it. So I'm wrong about that. I thought like everyone would say with thrillers, but okay. All right, let's see. I think if we're wrapping up around an hour, I don't know, we could go over a couple minutes, but we could maybe do one or two more questions. Teresa, do we have time to do one or two more questions? We'll just go, and we'll see. Well, she can pop in. Do you know the ending of your novels before you start writing, or does your novel evolve organically? Vanessa, do you want to go first? Oh, there's Teresa. There's Teresa. Do we have like 10 more minutes?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Thanks, Teresa.
Yeah.
Okay, Vanessa. Yeah. Do you know the ending of your novels before you start writing?
I have an idea, but once I nail the beginning, that's when I can really move forward. And usually whatever I imagine at the end is not good enough. And I'm sort of waiting for the like kick in the stomach of like, oh no, it's gotta be this. And I need to feel like upset about it and mad that I have to write it because it makes me feel uncomfortable. Like, usually my original ending is like my easy ending. And then I got to get to the one that's like the real one.
Okay, that's interesting. That's so interesting. What about you, Wendy? Do you know them before you do it?
Yeah, so I usually do. Sometimes it's built around the ending. Emma in the Night, the ending came to me, and then I wrote the whole story to accommodate that ending. The same thing with a short piece. I just did an Audible original, and that's coming out actually March 1st, called Hold Your Breath, and that was written for the ending as well. So sometimes you come up with a great twist, and then you construct the book around the ending. With All Is Not Forgotten, it was the concept that I wanted to give life to, and the moral dilemma. I really didn't know how that was going to end. I had 3 possible endings, and I wrote the middle one, and I ended up revising it to be the less bad one than the middle one. And then, as with The Night Before, I knew who the villain was. And then with Don't Look for Me, it actually changed. The motivation, I mean, I knew the outcome, but the motivations and the why changed from the first plotting, and maybe even a few chapters in, and I had to go back and rewrite a few. And that happens sometimes. If you sort of like, okay, I think this is going to be the bad guy. I'm not really sure what the motivation is or what all the driving are. And sometimes it'll change. So it varies from book to book, but I feel like a book can be built around so many things. It can be built around a concept, an opening scene, a relationship, or just a great twist, a great ending, that you want to construct the book around. So it depends book to book.
Okay, great. Thank you. What about you, Jen? Do you know the ending before you write?
I never know. No, I mean, I usually start with like a situation or a problem, and then I let the characters work them out, which is dangerous because sometimes they don't do what you want them to do, or they do something that your editor doesn't want them to do. And then you have to rewrite the whole thing. But yeah, I just sort of start with a situation and then go from there.
Okay. So you don't know the ending. Okay. Lane said something funny. She said, I did a lot of suspicious antifreeze murder research for my serial killer book too. That's so funny. I think there's just one more question. The last question is, do you ever wish you could change something in your novel after it goes to the printer? Wendy would like to know. Anybody? You want to jump in?
Yeah, for sure. I have, for sure.
Vanessa, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I've only have 2 books out, and I'm like yes.
Like, is it like cutting stuff? Is it like, oh, I wish I just edited a little bit more, or oh, I wish I added more?
No, I mean, it's very specific. And little voices, I think there were too many little voices. I think it drove too many crazy. I liked it because I wanted to really represent the feeling of psychosis and postpartum. But I think it's a lesson in like, you don't need to be accurate. You need to tell a good story. And some people really liked it, and it's fine. But I do think, in hindsight, I was like, I think I went a little like too far with it. So
yeah. Okay, that's so interesting. What about you, Wendy?
So I feel like I get my kinks worked out in the first pass. So there's the way you hand in the book, and there's copy edits. So that's where they catch all of your inconsistencies and mistakes, and then you get to fix that. And then there's 2 more reads, and they come spaced, pretty far apart. So I would say that I do actually do more changes than what you're probably supposed to do. With Don't Look For Me, I remember the last pass I had over 100 changes, and they weren't just like little words. It was like there was a Post-it on almost every other page. And it was really, having had all that time reading it, I just felt like, the same, like things were too repetitive, or things were just tossed in where they didn't belong. And so I changed them, and they did it for me. So
were they irritated with you?
I don't know, probably. No one ever said anything. So, but then I was okay because that was, you get 2 reads and a lot of time has passed. So that's like a really great part of the process, is that you do get it. You get a long stretch of time, and then you get to read through the whole thing, and it almost feels new. And that's when I always catch stuff where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe how bad this is. Like, I really Don't Look For Me. I was like, oh my God, pull back the blurbs. We'd send it to someone to blurb. I'm like, can we pull it back till I make all these changes? It's horrible. It's such a brutal process. It's brutal.
My original pub date was really quick, like after I got the deal. And so they printed out the arcs very early. And every time I sent out an arc, I was like having a panic attack because I'm like, I've changed so much. This is awful. So yeah, but those were the arcs, whatever.
I got an arc this year from an author who will remain nameless, but she had a note in there. Okay, this person is this name now, and this person is this name now. Yeah. I loved it. I was like, girl, I get it.
Yeah. What about you, Jen? Is there anything that you want to change after it goes out?
I feel like I resolved everything before it went this time, but I'm definitely in that camp of wanting to go back and change names of things. Like feeling like I should have done a better job, because sometimes when you're going through the first time, like I just give them placeholder names or whatever, like, and then it makes more sense. You give it more thought or whatever, and you go back to it and you come up with something better, or there's something that means something different. So that's probably my worst habit, is going back and picking at things like that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think we got through all the questions and we went over just a little bit. Teresa, thank you so much. This was just wonderful. One of the things that I have enjoyed about, we can't really go out much, is because, talking to you guys, I wouldn't be able to do that ordinarily. So this is lovely. Being able to meet you all virtually and hear about your books. They're so amazing. But I want to thank you, Teresa, and thank you, City Lit Books, for having us.
Thank you to all of you. It was a wonderful conversation. Thanks so much. And for everyone that's here, don't forget, you can go to citylitbooks.com or call us in the store for curbside pickup and pre-order Sharon's book. Thank you so much. These are a wonderful conversation.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thanks and good night.
Bye. Night, Mom and Dad.
Bye.